Mesdames, Messieurs, Monsieur Bob Haro va nous faire sa conférence. Thanks a lot for being here, Bob. And everybody here is pleased to see you. Okay, thank you.
Good evening. How is everybody tonight? Everybody good? Hello, welcome. I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight to see and visit and see the show that Seb has put together, and Frank has helped to put together, and everyone else that's been involved. And I really appreciate the great turnout to see everybody and the support. Thank you very, very much. And it's an honor to be here. I haven't been in France in more than 10 years, so it's really nice to come here and see all my BMX family. So I have an official translator here too.
Donc voilà, il tenait à vous remercier d'être venus aussi nombreux et à remercier évidemment les organisateurs. Ça fait plus de 10 ans qu'il n'est pas venu à Paris. Donc il est très content de vous faire cette présentation. Bob Haro, it's all yours.
Oh, thank you. So thank you guys, thank you very much. I want to thank all of the people that contributed to get me to come out here. I appreciate the generous offer to fly me out here and to come to this great event. So it was just a couple weeks ago that Seb and Frank sent me an email, said, would you like to come to Paris? And it's difficult to say no to that offer. So anyway, no, I'm happy to be here. So tonight I put together a little presentation, and it's many slides, so maybe it's a little long, but if you guys have any questions, please ask questions. You know, tonight is your night too, so if you have questions maybe from back in the day when you rode your BMX bike and maybe the riders like myself came through into Europe or into Paris, if you had questions you wanted to ask, please ask tonight. So this is an open discussion. I also want to thank and is pleased to meet the French riders that were on my team or rode for me. I really appreciate the efforts that they did for my brand back then, and it's a great honor to meet them as well tonight. And I thank them for all the hard work that they did for making my brand famous in this country and in Europe, and it's a good honor for me. Thank you. So I think, you know, I kind of wanted to start out by saying when I was a rider and when I first came and started traveling and doing BMX, and as an example, coming to Europe or coming to Paris or something like that, for me as a young guy coming to a place like this was a dream. And to see all of you, how much BMX is still in your heart and still in your spirit is very exciting for me. And I have to tell you, at the time when I was a rider, and I think like a lot of riders, we were young kids when we did it, like you guys all were as well. But I think, you know, the sport was so new, and we were traveling around, and I don't think we understood the impact that we had as we traveled around the world riding our bicycles and doing shows and kind of spreading the word of BMX and freestyle BMX. So, you know, it was a very innocent time in BMX at that period because it was before the internet. You know, videos were very scarce, and only information was magazines. So, and for us coming here, most of us, the American riders, we had never been to Europe, let alone Paris or Germany or any place. So for us, it was a big experience. And so it's great to come here 25 years later, maybe 30 years later, and see how BMX has impacted all of you. It's still in your heart, you like it, you love it. And then also to see how far BMX has come. It's a very popular sport now. It's not alternative sport anymore. BMX and skate and these sports are now mainstream sports. So you know, I was there on the beginning, but you guys were there at the beginning too. So I think that we all have a special place in this sport, and to watch it to grow up to where it is today. That's probably a lot to.
Yeah.
Thank you. So guys, I have a lot of slides here, so I'm going to try to go a little bit fast and not bore you too much. But most of you maybe know the story that, you know, I was a kid that grew up in Southern California, in San Diego. And in the 70s when I grew up there, most of the kids were into skateboarding, surfing, motocross, and BMX was just starting. So for me, freestyle started I was a skateboard guy at first, but I wasn't so good at skateboarding. I did motocross too, was in the beginning, before I even did BMX. I was into racing motorcycles and motocross, but I was okay at motocross. More of a show-off. I'd like to do wheelies and jumps and things like this, but racing I maybe got some trophies, but most of it was jumping. In Southern California at this time, where I grew up, was many fields, so there was plenty of places you could ride your bike, ride your motorcycle. It's now, I'm a teenager, 17, 18 years old, skateboarding. There's skateboard parks everywhere. So, we're blending what we do on the dirt bike, what we're doing on a skateboard, and what we're doing on a BMX bike. This is a shot of me racing back then. So I was, again, about an 18-year-old kid. So this shot is in Marina del Rey in Los Angeles. So it's a skate park. So all of those things, the skateboard culture, the BMX culture, the motocross culture, and then surfing as well, kind of put it into what became freestyle BMX and what you see today. So that was the beginning. That was kind of the birth of what freestyle is. So this is some early shots of me. The lifestyle back then too was very much about the California beach lifestyle. So this was up in Manhattan Beach, and so the surf style was becoming very popular. And so again, everything was mixed up together. The cultures were all mixed together. So I picked this shot only because I think it's very funny. It's some kid in the middle of the United States, out in the middle of nowhere. It's completely flat, but he has his bike and he made some jumps. So I think that kind of shows the spirit of BMX. I'm sure we've all done that. You made a jump, you made a little ramp, and here's a kid doing the same thing. So this guy is a very famous guy for me, and many of you guys probably know him. His name is Bob Osborne, and Bob Osborne started a BMX magazine called BMX Action. And BMX Action was the first BMX magazine, and Bob Osborne, he gave me the chance to do something into BMX, and I got started with him with my artwork, with my cartoons. So I think many of you know that I was a cartoonist, an illustrator. But this guy, I was an 18-year-old kid. I sent him my artwork. He liked it, and he said he would pay me if I would do drawings for the magazine. So that was the beginning of my career as an artist and actually making some money in the BMX business. So some of these slides here, maybe you guys remember these. These are the early BMX bikes. So again, this is late 70s, and BMX is growing. And at that time, people were thinking that maybe the BMX bike should have suspensions on them like a motorcycle. And back then, everything was possible and anything was possible. The Japanese brands came in, Kawasaki, Yamaha, Suzuki, all were making BMX bikes. And I just thought this was so cool, just the look of the bikes back then. There was even, Yamaha made advertisements for BMX, promoting the sport of BMX. BMX went through a funny stage, This was kind of the beginning of the Star Wars era, and BMX had that feeling. So I think this is another very famous shot from Skyway, but of Stu Thompson and Byron Friday, and Greg Hill was in this shot. So, Skyway Tough Wheels come into the market. Rider like Bobby Encinas was an early, champion in America. He was the #1 rider. Shimano was big into BMX at the time. This is a very nice ad here. See, this one translates. So in America, we have what's called PC, politically correct. You can't do this anymore. So the style was, 80s style was very funny, where you got dancers and freestyle. So the look was kooky, but it was funny. So there's RL and myself. So RL was, when I moved to Los Angeles and I got a job working for Bob Osborne at BMX Action magazine, I moved out. My parents got divorced. I was 18. My dad sold the house, and he says, you need to find a place to live. So I was just starting to do cartoons for the magazine, and Bob Osborne from the magazine said, hey, you can come and live with me. You can work at the magazine. And I meet his son, R.L. Osborne, who was a very talented rider, very talented BMX rider. And so here's my roommate. I move in with Bob Osborne, and R.L. Osborne is my roommate. And we start riding together, and I show him freestyle, and things kind of evolve from there. So the style back then, again, BMX was evolving. In BMX, the style was not defined like it is today. Today it's much more street or at least on the freestyle side. And people ask, we used to wear the uniforms and things like that. When I was working at BMX Action Magazine, BMX was unheard of sport. It was an infant sport. And working at the magazine, we always wanted to have like a professional image of what BMX would be and how it was presented. So we would always wear the team uniforms and things like that. And the same thing happened for freestyle as well. This ad was the first ad with myself, and I rode for Torker bicycles. So Torker was the inspiration for the Haro Freestyler that you see in the display here. So I rode for Torker for a while, and my Torker was not the same. I had a kind of modified bike. I had it made special for me with the geometry and more heavy-duty dropouts, and I rode with a coaster brake. Everybody was running freewheels. I was running coaster brake for doing the tricks. So I eventually went to them. Freestyle was taking off, and I said, I have an idea. I'd like to do a freestyle bike. And then the Haro Freestyler was the first freestyle bike ever made. So it was a good opportunity for me and to work with Torker, and they were nice enough to work with me and make some very limited pieces, just small quantities in the beginning. So that's actually how I started my little company doing bikes, was just frame and forks. So this number plate, I don't know if many of you guys knew, but before it was called Haro Bikes, and before there was a little brand called Haro, my little company was called Factory Plates. And these number plates, I made these at my parents' house. So I made one for myself and one for my sister's boyfriend that I used to ride with. And we were racing BMX, and I put these on our bikes, and it kind of exploded from there. So this was the very first product that I started. Before there was the Haro company, this is what I started with. So my friend tells me that you should change the name, though. You shouldn't call it Factory Plates. And I said, why? He says, well, all you can make is number plates. Why don't you come up with another name? So he talked me into using my last name, which I thought was stupid. It didn't sound very cool. So anyway, but that was the beginning. And this was the first flyer that I used when I started my business. I made a little flyer, and I would, at the BMX races, I would hand these out in between motos. I was racing, so I would hand these out to all the kids, and I started getting orders, and all of a sudden this little business was starting. And this was my first ad that I did. So again, I had no budget, so I had to do a cartoon. I used my cartoon, and then I was working for the magazine, and I laid this out in BMX Action. So this was the beginning. This was my first booth when I started my little business. We made this by hand in the back of the warehouse. So it was the first freestyle bike, was on display here. So, at that time, no one paid attention to freestyle. It was all about racing. No one thought anything about it. So we were selling a lot of number plates at this time, but no one was paying attention to freestyle. So that was good for me because it gave me a couple of years to establish my little business. So the number plates, how many of you guys still have your original number plates? Do you guys still, many of you that raced or maybe did
Combien de
freestyle?
personnes ont encore leur plaque chez eux? Une de leurs
Yeah,
premières plaques.
1, 2, 3, got a few, yeah? Stefan, you still have? So I still have this one. This was when I rode on BMX Action Trick Team. So I didn't save many things, but I did save that. This shot was a very classic shot. So if you've seen some of the early video footage, that was shot behind BMX Action magazine. And this was a shot. R.L. Osborne is here. We both had the same hair kind of style. We had crazy hair back then. You had to have curls to be on the team. Yes. I was in much better shape too. But this is at the magazine. The magazine was just starting. the cold office, I had my drawing table. That was my desk. And in between, we would take breaks and go out and ride. And this is what we would do. We'd work on the BMX magazine, and then we'd go ride our BMX bikes. These are early shots of the shows with RL and I in Los Angeles, in Anaheim. And this was a Pepsi-Cola. Pepsi had a half pipe that they used for their skateboard team. And yeah, we got to borrow that. It was not too fun to ride, though. It was a little slippery. So, but this was all the beginning. This was in Chandler, Arizona. So, again, freestyle was only, at this time, was a sideshow. It was like a circus act. It wasn't a sport. You guys have any questions yet?
Est-ce qu'il y a des questions? Quelque chose qui vous a interpellé? Un flashback?
J'ai une question.
Sure.
Were you the one jumping with the motorcycle?
Yeah, that was me.
The super high one?
Yeah, that was me. I crashed right after that. So this photo here is the first time ever freestyle was in a magazine. So this was what, 1979, I think it was. So I was working at BMX Action. I got hired for the job as artist for the magazine. Bob Osborne knew I knew how to do tricks. So then one day he saw me doing it. He thought, hey, that's cool. We should make an article on that. And this was the first article. It was just a basic trick, but that was the moment that things started.
It's the very first article.
This is the first article.
Who came up with the name for the trick?
The trick, the rock walk, was my friend John. It was a skateboard trick in the pools. So we borrowed that. Back then, though, you remember the... Oh, we have a question here.
I would like to know when... Pourquoi on voit plus la marque en Europe? Non, mais attends.
C'est après ça.
We have a professional translator here.
Just, I would like to know who first ride ramps. You know, how it comes, it's skate.
Like a quarter pipe ramps?
Yeah.
Quarter pipe ramps happened when the skateboard parks started getting closed down. So in America, we have too many lawyers. And the lawyers started suing, kids getting hurt, and then they were suing, the parks were closing down, and that's one reason. And then the real estate prices were too expensive to have a skateboard park. So when that changed, when there was no more parks for us to ride, we started making ramps. My brother did construction, so we made a basic quarter pipe.
They really wanted to know who was the first guy who ever rode a ramp, like a quarter pipe, but there's no real answer, right? Mais donc il explique qu'il avait un ami qui était charpentier et il pense être parmi les premiers à avoir roulé sur un quarter.
Like this here, it was just a very basic wood ramp. Can you ask how many guys here made their own ramps?
Combien, il veut savoir combien de gens qui ont fabriqué leur propre rampe?
See, there's a lot. Half pipe or quarter pipe? Quarter pipe, how many? Got a lot?
How many ramps?
And how many half pipes?
How many ramps do
You made a half pipe? Half pipe? Wow. Cool. How about a wedge ramp? The kick turn ramp. Everybody had a kick turn ramp.
Everybody.
Anybody get hurt on those ramps? Yeah.
No, that's a good question.
How did I deal with injury? You just waited until you felt better and then you rode again. I didn't have insurance. So you guys, this shot is, for me, is pretty classic. I don't know if you remember this magazine, Action Now. So in the US, this was done by skateboarder, Action Now. So Action Now was a magazine on extreme sports. It was on skateboarding, mountain biking, BMX, downhill, crazy skiing, sandboarding, everything. So before ESPN X Games, these guys were first. These guys had the vision. The downside, they were about 12, 15 years too early, 10 years too early. Easy. So.
And that was your first shot on there?
This was my first, I got on the cover, well, I had a cover before, but this was a cover shot. But the cool thing about this magazine was all about, it was lifestyle, action sports, music, So again, guys, just a lot of the stuff back at this time. Again, this is probably 81 still, 80, 81. And this is the homemade ramps that we built, and we would take them to the parks, down to the beach, ride and practice. And now we could take freestyle everywhere. So that's how, for us, the ramps came about. And you guys remember back then, again, the early days in BMX, before videos, there was the how-to, shots in the magazine, how to do a trick. So you probably remember learning how to do tricks. Any of you guys have this book? Couple?
Est-ce qu'il y a des gens qui ont ce livre?
We didn't make very many. I think we made 12,000 of these books, and we sold all of them. But and then we did a video for sure. Our first video, not very good, but we did one.
If you can bring it back, I think from what I remember, it's one of the few that ever arrived in France back in the days.
Oh, really? Yeah.
There were only a few videos.
It was because it was uncensored.
Yeah, that maybe.
Whatever that meant. So the first tour that I went on my own was in '81. This was the graphic from the tour. So I bought a van. I made ramps. Does it look like nice?
Oh.
Isn't that bad? It was perfect. And we would travel all over America doing shows. And we would follow the racing circuit, and in between races, these are all the kids that were there racing BMX, and we would go out there and do a halftime show for them.
It's a bit family style, huh, on the pictures.
Oh, the other picture? This
I
one?
mean, the atmosphere. Well,
This is family style, yeah. The parents bring their kids out to the races, and everybody's hanging out, and we would do a demo. And we're in the middle of America here, and they've never seen freestyle. We break out these ramps, turn on the music, and we ride, and they were just going crazy. And that was our setup. We had our van, and then we had our ramps, and we took off for 2.5 months, 3 months, all over the United States. And we did shows. We didn't get paid. We didn't make any money. The only thing I was trying to promote was my little business. And it was like today. You're sitting here talking to people. We're doing everything from, a small bike shop to the county fair to malls, everything. I mean, it was very, very basic. So the sport was growing, in popularity in the magazines, and a lot of the shows we were doing. This was from the NEC. This I remember, I think was in a mall in Belgium. I think I'd been on the road too long. You can see my face, I'm looking a little tired there, but this was in Australia. But again, for me, when I was riding back there, I was really lucky. I was the first guy to go and do freestyle and kind of travel around, spreading kind of a new religion. And that was about riding a BMX bike on ramps.
As you said earlier, were you actually realizing what was going on? Like people calling you over and...
I think at that time, I think I was still too young in my head. For me, it was just what I've done for a long time. So I was pretty... So again, this was back, this one's obviously from '82. I just found these pictures, so some of them I don't have, so I maybe found some off the web. But this was back when we were riding, and this was in the '80s. We would have maybe 2,000 kids would be at a bike shop waiting all day for us to show up, and it was a crazy time in BMX. It was really exciting for everybody. We'd roll in, and you see all of these kids, and and they're all on BMX bikes.
Was it just a bike shop, or? Yeah,
this was a bike shop. Yeah, we would go out and we would do a safety clinic.
Yeah.
Tell the kids to be careful on their bikes, and then we'd ride ramps. So it made perfect sense. And then we'd bunny hop them.
Yeah.
So if I'm going too fast with the images, tell me. I just have a lot of images here.
Est-ce qu'il y a des questions aussi?
So these ramps, I have to tell you the story on these ramps. I thought it would be a good idea to make plexiglass ramps. Terrible idea. They were expensive to make, and they were like glass when they got a little dust on them. So later you saw them, they had grip tape all over them. But they looked really cool in the first pictures we took. So,
What was your favorite trick? Help us on that.
my favorite trick, I don't know, 540s and rollback 540s and fakies and stuff like that. And aerials when I can do them not as high as you, Stefan. I liked ramp stalls. I was good at ramp stalls. That was my trick too. Kick turns, of course. So these are again pictures from Marina Del Rey.
Oh, hold on, there's a
Okay,
question down there.
question.
He's wondering how you were surviving back then. Were you already
How was I
selling bikes, or
No, I was
it
doing actually
cartoons?
I was surviving by doing the number plates had taken off.
Were you selling many bikes back then?
We didn't sell bikes until '83 or so.
Oh.
Yeah, about
They
'83.
were just prototypes then.
Yeah, but the actually the business, the BMX business was pretty good for me. As I was about 21 years old, and I was doing my number plates and gloves and pads and some jerseys, and we were selling more than $1 million a year as a 21-year-old kid.
Donc,
So it was good. We were having fun.
yeah.
We were having fun. We were making money. We were riding our bikes, and you're hanging out with all your friends. So it was good.
Yeah. We're still not realizing when you got that much money in your bank account.
Well, it wasn't all in my account. It was we were
Well,
just the business.
I mean-
the business was growing. I think it was.
We're just surfing the wave.
We were just
Pretty
riding
much.
the wave. We were
Yeah.
enjoying. Yeah, but it was all good. Everybody, you know, I had a small company. I had 22 people working, making number plates and all this stuff for me. And my friends would come over. We'd ride our bikes. We'd party together.
Fun times.
It was just fun. We had a good. Christian.
Yeah, back in the days, would kids come and show up to you because like, oh, I really want to do tricks on the bike, or was just like a show and no one will ask you how to do that?
No, kids. You mean like would kids show up and want to ride and do? Yeah, that's when we were first doing freestyle demos. That's how we met guys like Dennis McCoy. We're in the Midwest. We just got done doing a demo, and then the local kids said, "Hey, you got to see this guy, Dennis McCoy." So okay, let's see. And he starts throwing some tricks, and we're like, "Wow, super cool." And I sent him a frame and fork and put him on the team. That was the beginning. How we met guys like Dennis McCoy and people like this. These shots here are from Stefan's hometown here. Excuse me, not here, but in Cologne.
I'm in the picture.
Yeah, Stefan's here.
Where?
He's right here. He looks different. So, but this was again the early days. Back then, this was at the Messe in Cologne. The German bicycle organization gets a hold of me and says, "Yes, can you come out and do some demonstrations?" So, okay, I've never been to Germany. Let's go. So we went out there. It was a difficult show though because the German people were very serious. Sorry, Stefan. And no one was clapping. No one was making any noise. And I was working very hard, but they were all just watching.
They were amazed. That's it.
I don't know. It was a trip. You know this place?
Yes.
Where is this? This is by Hockenheim?
Karlsruhe.
That's cool.
Karlsruhe. You guys know, the old school collectors would know Rainer's Bike Shop.
Very nice.
Is that what this?
Yeah.
So guys, this shot here is another one again from the beginning. This was, I shared with you different countries that we went to, or I went to, and I went by myself. I didn't have a team, it was just me. I was the act. So I would show up. This was in a little town in the south of Australia called Ballarat. It was in cold winter, and I had an invitation they said, "Would you like to come to Australia? We'll pay for your trip. You can live there for a month. We have a beach house for you. But every day you have to do a show." Well, every day, but on maybe 5 shows in a week. And I said, "Sure, let's go." So, this was the beginning though. There was no sport. It was going to a mall, going to a school, going to a shopping center, going wherever someone would pay attention. So this happened to be at a BMX race. So we had a lot of kids there. But all of them were pretty blown away. This was from NEC. Sorry, some of the shots are repeated. So James Casimus was a photographer and a good friend of mine, and still a good friend of mine. He worked at Skateboarder, and he was a very famous guy in action sports. And I hired him, and him and I became very good friends. But James shot all the really cool shots of me. So he helped with my success too, in kind of stylizing the sport in his angles. This shot here, you know, this shot was an outtake from doing the freestyle handbook. And it was the end of the day, we got done shooting, and we thought one more shot. So my friend, he pulls his car in the background, his Volkswagen, and my other friends were in the front of the light. He turned on the lights, and then my other friends were kicking dirt. So making the dirt turn to dust, and we shot the photo. Like, cool, okay, we're done, let's go. And it turned out to be a pretty famous shot for me. I like that one. So again, a lot of shots from James Casimus here. This was downtown Los Angeles. We'd have to go into a place like this very quickly because security would be on you. So James, he'd bring his backpack and his camera, and we go in and we bang out some shots, and then we leave quickly. This is, what year was this? This was probably 79 or 80. 80 probably, because this was on the BMX Action Trick Team colors there. Same deal, same banks, downtown Los Angeles.
Back in the days, you know.
Back in the days. Well, that's when I actually had a sponsor. Like, besides getting free Skyway Tough Wheels, free flight cranks, I got free shorts. So it was good. So this shot, I think most of you, again, know that I was a designer, and that's what I do today still. I still design products and advertisements, but I do it for other brands, and now I've been working on some new things. But this was the early shots from a BMX Plus interview. But that was my basic office. It was very simple, but you know, this is what I would be working on. It was my cartoons, illustrations, and I was lucky enough to be working with BMX Action, and they gave me a page in the magazine every issue to do whatever I wanted to do. I just needed to make sure I made the deadline. So
It's the hardest.
the hardest was the deadline, but I always waited to the last moment. If it was due tomorrow, I would start tonight.
It was only that one page, or you were doing other stuff?
I was doing work for Motocross Action magazine. I was doing stuff for Oakley back then. Redline, I designed the Redline jersey, the ABA logo. SE Racing, I did the SE Racing logo. The Race Inc. logo,
Okay.
Race Inc. Oakley, I did some posters with Stu Thompson, you know. So that was how I was making money too, is doing artwork for people. This was the Christmas card for Oakley. So that's why we had Santa Claus. And I don't know if you guys raced motocross, there was a rider named Bob Hanna. He had the lightning bolts. So that's where I got my idea for the lightning bolts for the number plate too. But of course Santa had lightning bolts on his helmet or his hat. So this was a more recent picture I did a few years back for Transworld. So it's kind of the old school generation, mid school, and then the new school guys. So this was like Matt Hoffman era, and this was you know, my era back then, and this is more like the Dave Mira style. So I thought it was appropriate that, you know, back then we had the racing look, even though we're doing freestyle with the pants and all the gear. Matt changed the style. They went more street, you know, with shorts and no visors, and I put Band-Aids on his helmet because Matt...
Wait a minute, Wilkerson changed his style.
Well, okay, Wilkerson changed, but Matt had a big influence too. But... anyway, and I put the Band-Aids on his helmet because I know Matt crashed a lot back then. And then I figured the new guys nowadays, you know, I figured it was appropriate to have DC, but put a dollar sign because the guys now are making all this money, you know, and the bike has a dollar sign on the head tube, and the sticker here is cash flow, you know. This says your logo here. So the kids nowadays, everything is for sale. Our time, we just had a look, you know, so... So then a little famous movie started and came out, E.T. So E.T. comes out, I'm this guy right here. And we shot this in Los Angeles in the Valley in, I think, September or October or summertime.
What year was it?
81? 80, 81, something like that.
Okay.
And it was very, very hot when we were shooting this. These guys are all not wearing shirts.
Yeah.
So the cool thing in this shot was, this was the outtake. I had my friend James Casimus. I said, hey James, I'm working on a film. I don't know what it is, but you should come out and check it out. So James comes out and he's got his camera, he's shooting photos. So I have all of these behind the scenes shots like this and more of the making of at least the chase scene in the movie E.T. So this guy here is a guy named Gene Randall, and he was the stunt director for Raiders of the Lost Ark. So it was really fun. We got to work on this film and talk to these guys and be a part of a movie that became very iconic for BMX. This is another shot from the film. Did we have an idea that the movie would become famous? No, we had no idea. It wasn't until I went to the movie theater and saw it, and I was like, wow, this is big. So before GoPro cameras, we had to run a helmet cam like this, super heavy on your head, but that was the kind of stuff. This is me here running the camera on the back. So if you watch the movie E.T. and you see the guys going back and forth really close, I'm pedaling and I have to stay close to the riders because we're getting that tight shot. So it was really a fun film to be a part of. So here we're on set, setting up the next scene. This is the scene. We come bombing down the hill, and the police see us, and he says, "I got him." You know, he says, "I can see him," and he backs in. He backs the car in. So the car is backing up, and we came down the hill, and we had to ride over the top of the car. So my job was I had to knock the light off the police car. So that was my big acting career moment. So this guy here, we don't know who he is. We're setting the shot up, and we're getting ready to do this. This guy comes up out of this station wagon. This car pulls up. Guy comes out, looks through the camera. Everything looks cool. Check, check, check. And then he walks away. It's Spielberg. He walks in and checks everything, and his guys are doing all the work. So I'm sitting here looking at like, who the hell's this guy? You know, so. And my sister used to cut my hair, or not cut my hair back then.
How did they get into hiring BMXers instead of skaters? Or?
You know what? I heard that they went to a local track in Los Angeles and asked some local kids if they wanted to participate. And that's what I heard. So this is pretty classic. So we had the ET bike here. All ET was a piece of foam.
C'était juste E.T. un morceau de mousse, voilà, de la peinture dessus.
So if you watch the movie, he's shaking like this because he's just a big piece of foam.
Quelle supercherie!
There wasn't really any famous guys. This was a guy named Robert Cardoza. He's still involved, like in the old school scene, but all the rest of the guys, yeah, that's Robert there. So again, there's Spielberg. So the guy that called me originally was this guy. His name is Jerem Schwartz. I had a phone call from him. Said, "Hey, you want to be in a movie?" And I talked to him like, "What? Want to be in a movie? What do you mean?" So that's where it started. So then for BMX Plus, I had to do a little comic with E.T. holding onto the Haro number plate. How you guys doing? Am I talking too much? Okay, good, thank you.
More kick turn shots.
More kick turn shots. I got too many, dude. I didn't edit this thing, sorry. I did like to do these tricks. This was a good trick. I was pretty good at it. Ramp style.
That was yours also, Stefan, right?
You copied me. Where's my royalty? No.
I had no chance. You were first.
Thank you. But you got a chocolate bar. You got the chocolate bar. So here is a classic shot. Mike Dominguez and Donovan Ritter were on my team. This was from, I think this was like a pipeline contest up there.
83 or 84, right?
Maybe. My memories, I can't remember all the dates. Too many events. So actually this photo should be before this photo. And here's why. So I stopped riding because I kept injuring my knee. I kept blowing my left knee out. And so that was kind of the end of my career. And then the reality came when I had Mike Dominguez on my team, who's 14 years old, and he can do 9-foot airs and not even warm up. That was his first air. And I remember sitting there looking at him going, my day is almost over. So you guys, I stopped riding intentionally. I didn't want to be that guy that kept trying to come back. And then every time you saw me, I got worse and worse and worse. So what I decided is when I got hurt, like the last time, I said, I'm done. I'm not going to do any more shows because I don't want to be remembered that way. And at the same time, like I said, I had Dominguez on the team, and I had Rich Seguir and all these other very great riders that were on my team. So at that point in time, I just shifted all my energy to the business. So that's what I did. So it was fun. These are just bad shots of bad hairdos at the time. So the classic thing, these were shots that we made for tour. And I like this shot because it's kind of gay, but it's the cool thing is this is back in the day. I rode for Oakley. You can see the sticker on the helmet. I rode for BMX Action, but Jim Gennard, the owner of Oakley, took his own pictures of his products back then. So Oakley is now a $2 billion a year company, but the guy that started the company, Oakley started not with glasses, they started with grips. They started with BMX grips. So I like that photo because of that. Sorry, and bad hairdos. Like Kid and Play, you know? It's my high top fade. So this was a fun shot too. Here we've got Mike King that rode on our team in BMX racing, who's now works for the US team for the Olympics, and then another fairly famous BMX rider, Matt Hoffman, was riding for us at this time. So this was an outtake shot from a catalog shoot we were doing, and I just saved the photo. I just thought it was cool. Matt wearing a jersey. So guys, I show you this number plate. This was on my car back then. And the reason I had this, you have to remember that BMX is not a sport. It's just something that strange kids do. Not, you know, when you're 25 years old, you don't ride a BMX bike. You're supposed to be in college. So I ride a BMX bike, and where I lived in Southern California, if you had a fancy car, people thought you were dealing drugs or something like this. So I got tired of being asked if I dealt drugs, so I thought, I'm going to get a number plate that says what I do. So I thought BMX pays was the right thing to say. So it was a little, we say cocky or arrogant, but it was fun to do.
Back then it was alright.
Back then it was okay. So we're almost done. So fast forward to today. There's a whole bunch of stories in between, and you guys can ask all kinds of questions. So 2007, I get a phone call from my friend Mark Luman that was working with Nike, and they said, hey, BMX is in the Olympics in 2008. Would you like to work with Nike on the US team gear? So of course I said yes. And so 2007 was kind of the push for me to kind of get back into BMX. And what I mean by that is I was always into BMX, but it really gave me a push back into the space, and because I kind of took a break for many years, and it was really cool. So 2007 I work on the gear. 2008 we go to the Olympics. Nike spends money like crazy. You don't even, I mean, it was super VIP to just be a part of that. Christian knows, he went. It was amazing for these guys and what they did for the sport of BMX. And so that was cool. From there, then I said, well, maybe I'll set up a Facebook site. So I set up a Facebook site. A couple years later, 5,000 people later, and I use my Facebook site to just basically kind of like tonight, communicate things I did, things that happened in the sport, and kind of share stories. We should have invited them all here tonight. So now I think we have a question back there.
Yes, Bob, can you tell us about the ownership of the brand, the selling of the brand, and your relationship with the brand?
Of Haro Bikes now? So I sold the company in '87. So I had started it incorporated the business in 1978. About 82, 83, we came out with the first freestyle bikes, and then we grew from there. When I sold the brand, I was at a point in the business that the business was becoming much more serious. And the bicycle business is very, very competitive. So I needed a bigger partner. So when I sold the brand, I had a distribution partner. It was a company in Los Angeles called West Coast Cycles. So they had 180 salespeople. They had 5 warehouses nationally. They had the Nishiki brand for road bikes. They had Haro for the kids' bikes, and then they had a brand called Cycle Pro for the low end. So I do a deal with this company, and in 1 year the business doubles.
Wow.
You know, the business, like I said, when I was doing the business as a guy that started it small, started in my parents' house, grew it, had a small company in Los Angeles. And then we started doing bicycles and more things. The business became much more serious for me. So when I sold my company, it was an opportunity to grow the business and to make it better, to make it bigger. And so I did that for 5 years. And it has its highs and lows in doing that. You know, it's not always easy. But in '93, I was finished with the business. My contract was up, and then the new owners had the company.
What were you back then? Was just like CEO or?
Yeah, it was just,
art director? Or?
Well, yeah, pretty much the, managing director of the business. I knew what I wanted to do, what models I wanted to do, all of this kind of stuff. We still had all of that control. But at the end of the contract is the contract. You're done. So
what was it after '93?
So after '93, I left the company and I just took a break from BMX. I took maybe 3 to 5 years off, and just because it was a strange time for me. So Haro Bikes for me was my baby. That was my first marriage. I'd never been married before, but I had Haro Bikes. That was my baby. So when I sold the company, it was exciting and it was good. But now that it wasn't mine anymore, it was a difficult time. So I had to rethink myself of who I am and what I'm going to do when I grow up. So I needed a few years just to not be around BMX and try to figure all that out. So it was a strange time. So anyway, yeah, everything has a cycle. So even the story of Haro Bikes has that cycle, and the business is different now. In BMX, Haro Bikes is still the leader in the BMX business. It sells more units than any bike out there. And I don't think, not because they're innovative, because I don't think my old brand is very innovative anymore, but it's because they have a worldwide recognized name. They have really good distribution, and that's a big part of the business, So, anyway, enough about Haro Bikes. And any of you guys that bought a Haro bike when I owned it, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I really do. Thank you. So now it's 2012. I've taken a break, and I've got some new ideas. So I'm starting a new little brand. It's called Iconics. And you remember the famous picture that we threw the dust in the air with the car lights? So I figured that should be my logo. And so I have some ideas to come back into the BMX space. For the UCI events, my company, we did all the graphics and branding for the Supercross races now. You'll see everything, all the ramps, all the podium, the interview, everything is done. We did all the graphics for that. And for that, Iconics is on there. So it's not formally announced yet, but I guess now it is with this big 5-foot sign on the side of the ramp. It is. And maybe some of you guys have seen this. So this year in July marks the 30th anniversary of the Haro Freestyle bike that's in the display that we talked about. So the product that I'm going to do is a 30th anniversary limited edition bike to celebrate that. So it'll be under my new brand, Iconics, and it's going to be very special. We're not going to make very many. We're going to make 540. And I won't tell you too much about them yet, but we're working on this now. So the whole story is a year ago, maybe a little longer, I went to Haro Bikes and I said, hey you guys, I have an idea. I want to start a new little brand. And I say, that next year is the 30th anniversary of the first bike Haro ever made. And they're like, oh really, it is? They didn't even know it was the 30th anniversary. So I tried to do something with them, to take Iconics and partner with Haro Bikes and work with them. So long story short, we couldn't put together a deal. So I decided that I'm going to do it on my own. So the first product will be the freestyle bike. And we'll announce that here very soon, what we're doing. And it's Stefan's event at the Worlds as well. So thanks to Stefan, he's helping me as well. So I'm going full circle. I'm getting back to my roots.
Will that be the launch over there?
We'll see.
At the Worlds, maybe?
If I get my work done, we will have something to show.
Okay, deadlines.
Stefan pushes me, yeah.
We're trying.
Yes,
Okay.
he's like a client. He's pushing. Well, I think you guys, for me, look at you. We started out tonight, the beginning of my BMX story, and now I have a new beginning in my BMX story. So for me, you know, I'm still into it. I still like it. I still love it. I still go to events like this. It's cool. I like it. For me, I feel very lucky that I can share a story and a passion to others that have a similar story and passion. So to do this, it feels natural. I mean, there's a lot of work for sure, but it feels like the right thing to do. Any questions? We're gonna
Related to that, what is your target behind that? Old
The-
school riders?
Anybody in this room? The first target market is definitely like the old school collectors. You know, that's the first. Someone that knows the story, appreciates the story, and understands. So that's the first person. But also the image is also to appeal to a younger rider. So we have plans for this too. But first is someone that understands the history.
Collectibles oriented or riding oriented?
It's both. No, it is really, yeah. Stefan, Franco.
Well, I'm fortunate Bob has shared a little bit about what he's doing, and knowing Bob, and you guys know why Bob is here today and what he's done for all of us and how creative he is and was in the past and still is. Expect this to be just as creative as he was back in the 70s and 80s. So it's a new era in BMX design. I can say that much without saying too much, really. But that's what you can expect from coming out of this guy. It's just what he's done in the past. He's just going to repeat. And the stuff I've seen is mind-blowing. It's so different from everybody else's. The way he's approaching designing products is incredible. So you guys, you better be on the lookout. And if there is a waiting list, I would get on it, because I'm sure those going to be great collector's items, and they're limited. So where can I sign up?
You're already on the list, Stefan. Any other questions, guys? We have a question here.
Yes, sorry to be back to the 80s, but
That's all right.
how did you like the time when your brand and GTs were fighting to know who was the number one? Was it a good time?
It was good fun. Yeah, it was good. Because GT was bigger than us. We were the smaller brand. So we were poking at GT. So we used to send, we would make those ads to wind them up, you know? And then we would send them, if we got a number one plate, we would make a cake. And we'd send it to GT that said Haro is number one, and we'd send it to their office. So we did all kinds of things like that. So it was fun, just going back and forth. It was all friendly though, it was all good.
That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
Until only one moment, GT, I remember at the bike show when we did the freestyle, the master with the bash guard. GT had their offices in Santa Ana. The show was in Long Beach in Los Angeles. We have the master with the bash guard. Gary Turner and can't remember, Sean, what was Sean's name? Whatever his name. Well, anyway, a couple guys from GT were staring at the bike like from a little ways away. They went back that night and made a version up and came back to the next day at the show with their own bash guard style bike. So they had the capabilities. They didn't have to go to Taiwan. So anyway, more questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, what did you do between 93 and 2008?
93 and 2008, I had a design and advertising business. So I got into the motorcycle industry. So I had what's called a non-compete. I couldn't do anything in bicycles for 2 years. And I started a small agency, and then I started working with motorcycle brands like Thor in motocross. I was designing motocross apparel. I was working with racetracks, AMA Pro Racing. I was doing television spots and radio spots for racetracks and print advertising, all kinds of stuff. But mostly on all motorsports at that time. Any more questions, guys?
With all the parts that you designed and that came out of the Haro offices, which ones will you remember? Which one do you prefer?
Which one do I remember? Which one do I prefer?
From all the parts that you ever came out with.
The brake lever. No. No, I don't know. I like a lot of the things we did.
Yeah.
Because.
Any favorites?
Well, I think whatever we did, whether it was the freestyle bikes and the Bashguard bikes and all the, the race bikes were fun. When we got into racing was a fun time when we were doing the Group 1 bikes. And then we got Mike King on the team and we had, Pete Lonkarevich. It was an exciting time. Our look was, we had a cool look. Everything was good. No, all of that, I don't know, all of it was fun. So.
Tout est une bonne expérience, tout est de bons souvenirs pour lui, que ce soit au niveau du freestyle que de la race, parce qu'il y a en plus des teams incroyables.
Okay, I've been told it's time to eat and drink now.
Okay.
Hey you guys, thank you very, very much for coming out. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bob. That's very, very nice. Moi j'ai adoré, c'était super intéressant. Merci à lui. Alors maintenant, on vous dit qu'il y a un petit buffet qui est servi avec à boire. Sachez que tout est gratuit, mais on a aussi un peu financé ça en faisant des t-shirts, des affiches. Donc si vous voulez nous aider un peu à financer tout ça, n'hésitez pas à acheter un petit t-shirt, une petite affiche et voilà.